Hi, Tom Trento here on TrentoVision.TV on the 26th of April, Friday, beautiful Friday afternoon in just a wonderful part of the country, South Florida. We appreciate all our viewers and listeners tuning in. If you're viewing, yes, you can view this extravaganza. Yes, you can, and you can do that on a whole bunch of various websites. Tea Party Community. Hi, Tea Party Community folks. Good to see you. TeaPartyCommunity.com, our activism partners there. Be sure to go sign up at TeaPartyCommunity.com. You can view this at our counterterrorism educational website, theunitedwest.org, or you can view it at our communication portal, TrentoVision.tv. That's how you can watch the TrentoVision show.
YouTube.
And on YouTube. youtube.com/theunitedwest. You can watch there. And if you're driving in your automobile anywhere in South Florida from North Miami to Orlando, you can listen on a great radio station, WNN 1470 on the AM dial. Be sure to listen at 6 to 9 every morning, like I do, to Brian Craig and Steve Kane. Steve's been on the air 30-something years. Brian's been with him about 12 years. They deconstruct the Obama administration like no one else does. They have a whole bunch of liberal callers, and they fight for 3 hours, and you can just see the way things should be, the ideological battles taking place. WNN 1470. Well, here on TrentoVision and WNN 1470 for the past week, this person over here, CJ,
Yes.
and me, and our crew, the guys back there in the bunker, we have been doing an investigative expose of a diabolical organization, Southern Poverty Law Center. I find it hard to use the word poverty.
The Southern Filthy Rich Law Center.
Yeah, filthy rich. You got $250 million in their stuffed in their mattresses.
And they don't even do anything legal.
No, and on Monday, Tony Perkins laid out... On Monday, Tony Perkins laid out the overview of the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. Tony's the president of Family Research Council. That's the organization that was listed as a hate group because they're a pro-family, pro-traditional marriage organization. Put on their hate map, the SPLC's hate map, and 15 August 2012, Floyd Lee Corkins, homosexual activist, looked on the SPLC site. You're going to hear about this from our two special guests in a couple of moments, and said, yep, I want to go kill the employees. I'm going to do it in a bizarre way. And you'll hear about that just a couple of minutes with our two great guests. Tony Perkins gave us an overview and a detailed analysis of the serious problems with the Southern Poverty Law Center on Monday. Tuesday, Peter Sprigg of the FRC dove into the issue of the homosexual activism of SPLC, and they are more money driven than ideology driven. They see a demographic, gay people, that has a lot of bread, and they go, oh my God, there ain't too many Klans people running around anymore for us to raise money off of. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people disagree with gay marriage, so let's hook up with the gays, let's promote their schedule and their agenda, and let's raise a lot of money and put it in the coffers. Yeah. Peter Sprigg exposed that. And then on Wednesday, we looked at Southern Poverty Law Center's collaboration, aiding, abetting with Islamic jihad. That's our area of expertise, the United West Trento Vision. In fact, we are also listed, full disclosure, by the SPLC, the United West is, as a hate group because of our work fighting terrorism.
Because we hate jihad.
Yeah, we hate jihad. And it's very important. We've said this through the series. We don't hate Muslims by any means. We hate an ideology that's destructive to Western civilization, and that is Sharia-compliant Islam. And we're going to fight that. But if you take a position like that, according to the Ivory Tower in Montgomery, Alabama, Southern Poverty Law Center, you're a hater, and they raise money off of you. And yesterday we had a great show with Charlotte Allen. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
She wrote a 6,000-word investigative story in the Weekly Standard, and we had her on as a special guest, and she wrote about the SPLC.
Yeah.
Told us how much money Morris Dees makes and how much with the
How
relationship.
they raise the money, how they spend the money.
Yeah, and how they are so highly rated by all the organizations that rate charities. They get an F.
They get
fail
an F.
every single time. But they laugh all the way to the bank. The Southern Poverty Law Center does. Well, today, our show, this was going to be the springboard show to a unique event that was going to take place on the 29th, which is Monday, where the shooter, the convicted terrorist, Floyd Lee Corkins, who went into the Family Research Council on 15 August 2012 to kill 15 people. He's been convicted. He was going to be sentenced on Monday.
He confessed, by the way.
He
It's not
confessed.
just that he was convicted. He confessed.
Yes. And but there's been a little delay in his sentencing. So why don't we get our guests on, and we'll bring those folks on, our two guests in D.C. So this is Florida. How are you doing up there, D.C.? Can you guys hear me? Let me see if we can see them.
Yes, we can.
Well, look
Very
who it
nice.
is. One of those people I know very well. Hi, Andrea.
Tom,
How you doing?
good to see you.
How many years has it been?
A long time.
Yeah, Andrea and I go back many years. Activists fighting battles. Her father, Lou Sheldon, just an amazing American hero, started fighting these cultural battles almost single-handedly out of California, and then just has become recognized. Andrea's picked up in his place and doing amazing work. And Ken, we're just meeting you for the first time. You're with Family Research Council, right?
That's right. I'm Senior Fellow for Religious Liberty, and it's great to be with you both.
Here's CJ over here. You can't see CJ yet.
Well, we can see you both fine.
Okay, you can see us,
okay,
but the
well, hi
viewer, we only have me on right now with the viewers.
Yeah.
As you know, we've been doing this 5-part series, and let's start with you, Ken, at FRC. Our desire today was to alert America to the sentencing, and then get some sort of action steps as to what Americans can do to raise the visibility level of how horrendous the situation was. Give us your take on what occurred 15 August 2012 and what your concerns are right now.
Well, of course, on August 15th of last year, Floyd Lee Corkins, posing as an applicant for an internship, managed to get through the front door with a backpack, and something didn't look quite right about him, didn't seem quite right to our building manager, who stopped him, asked who he was and how he could help. And of course, as he was going through this script that he was here to apply for an internship, he reached into his backpack, and the building manager grew suspicious, so he quickly closed the distance, and Corkins pulled out a gun and put it to the building manager, Leo Johnson, put it to Leo's head, and managed to take the time, thankfully, took the time to try and gloat over his would-be victim, to tell him that he didn't like our politics. And then he pulled the trigger. Fortunately, and thankfully, providentially, Leo, again, having closed the distance, and Corkins, being an amateur with a gun, didn't understand that if you have a handgun, you don't allow yourself to get to point-blank range. You want to keep at least 5 feet distance between you and your target. Leo was able to smack aside the gun as he was pulling the trigger, and so the bullet shot into his arm instead of his head, shattered the bone in his arm, yet even wounded. Corkins is a full-size guy, but even wounded, Johnson was able to tackle him to the ground, wrestled the gun away from him, and held him at gunpoint while the police came. The police came, the FBI came, they closed down the building, and if you fast forward, as was just referenced, we actually got a confession. As part of a deal, he was convicted, the first ever conviction for domestic terrorism in Washington, D.C., and he signed a full confession where he explained what he was doing, where he got his information, and he explained that he called himself a gay rights political activist who was opposed to FRC and various other groups because of our traditional Christian stand on traditional marriage, that he was there with 100 rounds of ammunition to assassinate everyone in the building, and that he had 15 Chick-fil-A sandwiches in his backpack that he was going to smear in our faces as a political statement. This was during the time when Chick-fil-A was also taking a stand for a traditional marriage. And he went on to say, where did you get all the information? He explained to the FBI that he got all this information from the website of the SPLC, including a map of how to get to our building.
Wow, and we're gonna play that video in a second. Can we cue that video up to play that? Not yet, but you mentioned that that Leo Johnson, the hero. I mean, he wasn't a security guard as was originally mentioned by the press. He was the building manager, and I was at FRC Family Research Council offices a couple of months ago, first time there. And I went in the lobby, and Leo Johnson was there, and I talked to him at length, maybe a half hour, and he walked me through everything. And Ken, when you said he was wounded, for our viewers and listeners, the wound, after Leo walked me through exactly the blocking of what happened and the bullet holes in the rug and in the ceiling in the lobby right now, he showed me his left arm. And, you know, I've been wounded by splinters and things. I mean, his arm looks like a wartime casualty. His arm was bent like and it was repaired at this point. The bullet went right through, did tremendous damage to his elbow, the whole area. He's handicapped, deformed for the rest of his life. I understand he's going through a series of operations. And I did not know, Ken, this is the first time I'm putting this together. When I've heard about the 15 Chick-fil-A sandwiches, so you know I assume he's going to kill 15 people and move on. But he wanted to kill all the 50, 60, 70 employees there, and rub the sandwiches in 15 people's faces. That is simply amazing. For our viewers and listeners, this is very, very critical on TrentoVision.tv, WNN 1470, because this was not known to the public until recently, but Floyd Corkins had, I think, a piece of paper or a document on him, and it was after he successfully slaughtered everyone at Family Research Council, he had two other targets. One of those, well, let's go to Andrea, the president of Traditional Values Coalition, and a very dear friend of mine. Andrea, why don't you pick it up from there and tell the folks that story?
Well, yeah, we heard about the shooting, and then I was gone out of town the next day. It was later that I was contacted off the record by law enforcement to say, in fact, the shooter had in his pocket our address. He was coming to our office next. And, of course, he was targeting us because we have been on the target list of Southern Poverty Law Center since the 90s, probably the longest of any pro-family group. And at some point, I'd like to talk about how we ended up on that list. But again, we as Christians were targeted. It's been very unnerving. We had also why it was unsettling and unnerving is that we have complained to the FBI for years. We've given them audio. They've heard the audio of threats, and they've completely blown us off. So it wasn't until after I raised a stink that I had FBI agents come to my home, my office, excuse me, along with a DC police officer to say, hey, you know, we're going to take you a little more seriously this time. But I think your viewers need to understand that all of our groups have basically been ignored. If you're Christian, we've been ignored by major law enforcement for years. And it took this tragic shooting, and fortunately, Leo stopped a whole lot of bloodshed. He would have killed people in my office as well.
Oh, my goodness.
You have a question?
Yeah, I would like, Andrea, if you could, please tell us a little bit more about how the Traditional Values Coalition made it onto the SPLC's hate group list in the first place, because apart from being opposed to gay marriage, What's it all about? And how do you get from being opposed to gay marriage to being anti-gay to being a hater anyway? Just because you're opposed to gay marriage doesn't mean you hate anybody anyway in the first place.
Right, we didn't, it sort of came up, it was in the 90s, and I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read some of these things. We monitored an event at the White House with President Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. It was the first ever summit on hate crime, and they said they invited pastors and citizens, and I thought, gosh, we work with pastors. We've got over 30,000 churches and so forth, the ministries we work with. Nobody I knew was invited. So we monitored it. I began to track what they talked about. One of the first things I came up was this thing called Healing the Hate. And the things I'm going to show you are what put us on the list in the early 90s on Southern Poverty Law Center's list.
Okay.
This had in this book for middle school kids, Healing the Hate. And again, in the 90s, they were making all their money off of, quote, hate crime prevention.
Right.
That was the issue of the day. Now they've moved to bullying, but also Islam and other things. So in this curriculum for middle school kids, it links Baptists and Pentecostals by name to white supremacists. Never in this curriculum does it say you can be a Christian or not all Baptists are white supremacists or anything. But the way they talk about it, they would lead a child to believe, a middle school kid to believe, that if you're a Baptist or a Pentecostal, you have an identity in Christ or a Christian identity, you're a white supremacist. Oh, and then we also, this is another thing that we talked about, that at this point, this was a curriculum. Now today it might not seem as outlandish, but it says there aren't any girl colors or boy colors. And it talked about that people who have always felt as if they were in the body of the wrong sex are called transsexual. Some transsexual kids grow up and get sex change operations and some don't. Now this is what they called age appropriate for elementary school.
That's for
There's
elementary.
Now this is not specifically Southern Poverty Law Center. These are their friends, their allies, and because we expose this kind of thing, they targeted us. One other little ditty. Janet Reno here. You guys don't shriek and run away, Tom. She's scary. Janet Reno, for those that don't know, was the attorney general under Clinton. She had this up. It was called Kids Page Comment on Hateful Acts in the Home. It was for kids. It said bias K through 5. So they basically said if your parents make a joke or say something that's prejudiced, turn them in.
Oh my gosh.
Kids to talk to their counselor, pastor, all these other people. So we made a really big stink about this. We were all over the Hill. There was media that covered it. But because of this kind of thing, we were exposing their anti-Christian bigotry and all of this supposed hate crime, anti-hate crime movement. And because of that, Southern Poverty Law Center targeted us.
Wow.
And one other thing that really bothers me, and I don't know if you've touched on this, but do you know who helps raise money for them? John Grisham, the writer.
Oh, wait, that's new information. You have to develop that for sure.
He does, the guy that writes the books
and
so forth.
Writer, yeah.
He's a major fundraiser for them. He signs their direct mail. This guy, John Grisham, is he solely responsible, partly responsible? Is he linked in any way? His name, he raises money for Southern Poverty Law Center. Did he contribute to what's happened in any way?
Very interesting.
Ken, what is your specific role at FRC?
I do religious liberty. A lot of that, of course, is in the courts these days with this administration. Everything from Obamacare to the HHS mandate to prayer for a high school valedictorian being able to say what she wants, to offer a prayer or to credit Jesus with giving her the abilities to do well in school, crosses and war memorials or commemorating slain state troopers who fell in the line of duty in Utah. So the broad range of issues in terms of the unprecedented assaults that we're seeing on religious liberty in our increasingly secular society, and with a presidential administration that really is just flooded with militant secularists that we see coming out, whether it's in the military, against soldiers of faith, not being able to say certain things during funeral ceremonies or to go to a certain chapel. It's certainly an environment rich of opportunities to talk about and write about.
Now, Andrea holds maybe the record out of many of the groups we're familiar with for being on this list such a long time. When did you guys get placed on Family Research Council?
It was just a few years ago, and it was really as the gay marriage debate turned the corner. Of course, a lawsuit that started just several years ago, which was just argued before the Supreme Court in the last week of March this year, that we'll expect a ruling on at the end of June, about whether there is some sort of invisible, previously unnoticed right for the past 150 years, since the 14th Amendment was adopted in 1868, that says there's a constitutional right to gay marriage, and really, legally speaking, not just gay marriage, but with that also comes polygamy, the constitutional right for any consenting adults to form whatever family unit they choose, and that no state is able to have any laws defining marriage as one man and one woman. So I think it's as that issue really heated up, that's when we saw that designation.
We could have a fabulous conversation on the postmodern impact, philosophical impact in the United States of the cultural change, and how the good guys are now the bad guys. But we want to keep focused on the SPLC. Yeah. Andrea, in all your years of fighting and arguing and talking to the FBI, did you ever ask anybody, how the heck did we get, what is their criteria? What is the SP? I mean, we've been trying
to find out. I mean, I know Tony Perkins, other people at FRC, I've been to the White House on many, many occasions. You can't get through security at the White House for the most part, unless you're wearing a really pretty dress. But for the most part, you cannot get in unless you've been approved, you get a clearance. So they are just spewing hate, throwing mud, being very dishonest, almost trying to deflect from what they're really about. I mean, one other thing I didn't mention was, they've got this curriculum teaching tolerance. Yeah. That's their big thing, teaching tolerance. Right. Yet, this isn't tolerant. They are the biggest anti-Christian phobes, haters of anybody out there. And, there's an exclamation point on it after last August.
Right, right. We had David Reboy from the Center for Security Policy on one of our
Wednesday. We had him on Wednesday.
SPLC shows the other day, and I wrote down this quote that he gave, which was, "These people, SPLC, hate conservative Americans more than they hate anything else." And that's the reason why we're all on the list. But
along those lines, let me just mention something. Another one of the cohorts with Southern Poverty Law Center is another group that puts out the stuff of why they're not thankful for Thanksgiving. Right. This group of people are the most un-American.
Right. Right.
Well,
this is all directed by unrepentant domestic terrorist Bill Ayers.
Well, he's tied in. Yeah.
Who's not only directing this educational program, but he's also a link for the SPLC with the Obama administration. And is this how the SPLC's hate groups list made it to the Justice Department and Homeland Security and the U.S. Army? And my question for you two is, how did it come to your attention that you were on the SPLC's list to begin with? And do you think that groups listed as hate groups by the SPLC should challenge this in some legal forum or not?
Well, in terms of, first of all, it's interesting that they're now casting a much broader net. It's not just social issues. Of course, you've referenced national security. Mm-hmm. They've labeled a prominent conservative immigration group, a hate group, and now they're going after Tea Party groups as well. So evidently, if you don't believe in government-run health care, if you think we should have limited government and low taxes, well, that makes you a hater as well. Exactly. So it seems they define a hater as anyone who strongly disagrees with them on really any aspect of the liberal agenda. I found out about it when I was in the middle of an interview talking about a religious liberty case that was on the court, and just got asked, by the way, we just got on the wires that Southern Poverty Law Center says that organization is a hate group. Would you like to respond to that? Well, let's finish talking about this lawsuit first.
Right.
In terms of responding legally, that SPLC is a private organization. Mm-hmm. It tries to cloak itself as if it has some sort of semi-official status, but it's an ultra-left organization. It's unfortunate that there are some law enforcement elements associated with this administration that choose to collaborate with them, choose to give them some credence. We hear that they were consulting with the authorities in Boston after the bombing. And since they are the only organization I can think of that's actually been linked to a convicted domestic terrorist, I can understand why they were regarded as an expert on that. But that has to do with why Floyd Lee Corkins, why his sentencing has now been delayed for 4 to 6 weeks, is his defense lawyers did not want to go before a federal judge for sentencing when we're staring in the face as to what domestic terrorism looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. We only have a few minutes left with you guys, and there's a couple of questions. I want to address the Army now buying into SPLC and putting out a letter.
Yeah,
and
that takes it out of the, for me, that almost takes it out of the realm of, you know, crossing the line between private and public.
What is the Army doing in the middle of this, right? Number one, we're going to show the video that just got released today with the FBI's interrogation of Corkins and how he says, hey, it was SPLC. In fact, let's show that first. You guys have that queued up? Take a look at this, Ken and Andrea. I think we're ready to go. Here we go. Nope, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's a great one too. That's Sarnev's mom yelling Allahu Akbar if her sons get killed. We showed that the last show.
Well,
but we're ready.
Makes you a hater.
Yeah, we're ready right now for the FBI and Corkins. Here we go.
Now, how did you, this building, this organization, how did you find it, or did you like look it up online, or how did you know about it?
Southern Poverty Law lists anti-gay groups. I found them online.
Okay.
A little bit of research went to their website and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrea and Ken, you've seen that by now. A couple of weeks ago, Todd Starnes at Fox News got his hands on a letter written by a lieutenant colonel at Fort Campbell, and he said, look, many events have been taking place across the country. Just want to ensure everyone is somewhat educated on some of the groups out there that do not share our Army values. And this was to 36 of this lieutenant colonel's subordinates. And he said, when we see behaviors that are inconsistent with Army values, don't just walk by, do the right thing and address the concern before it becomes a problem. We need to make sure we maintain our standards, starting with the reception and integration. Thanks. Domestic hate groups. Then he goes on to list you guys, us, a whole bunch of our friends, basically.
Yeah.
What is this?
The Fort Hood shooter isn't on there, though.
Of course not. What does this indicate? What kind of transition are we looking at here, where the United States Army now is?
Why are they interfering in domestic affairs anyway?
Yeah, what is that all about?
That was the first time that's happened, where they've gone to their troops and said something like that. The truth is, there's a spirit that's been unleashed because of this administration, and I think there's a few crazies in the Army, but for the most part, the Army doesn't agree with that officer. They don't agree at all. They are God-fearing, patriotic people who would be on these watch lists. But Americans are unaware that this kind of stuff is going on.
Yeah.
And just as that was happening just today, as in fact we've been writing about, it's also been reported that a number of Southern Baptist chaplains in the military were unable to access the website of the Southern Baptist Convention. They got an automated message that from the Pentagon that their access to that site was being blocked. It was regarded as hostile. Fox is talking about that today. We've been talking about it, reporting on it with Breitbart News as well. So that comes right on the heel of this colonel cited to, which I would agree. I mean, we work with people here at FRC. The executive vice president is a retired 3-star Army general. We have other Army officers here. Tony Perkins is a Marine. I guess Marines and soldiers kind of kid each other that whether they want to be lumped in the same crowd, there seems to be a lot of good-natured ribbing that goes on. But I mean, this building is full of former military personnel, and yet you get statements coming like that. It's really been a radical secular agenda, and now we see that coming from a number of these operatives that have that have found their way into the Pentagon, civilian operatives for the most part, one would think, under President Obama.
Except for when it comes to Islam. Islam is permissible for everybody.
There are no,
jihad is a forbidden word.
Unbelievable.
Sharia is a forbidden word. But the religion and glory of Islam and anything to do with Muhammad is perfectly okay for everybody in the Army. But you can't say Christ.
Nope.
You can't be a Christian. You can't be Jewish.
Nope.
Maybe the Southern Poverty Law Center will take up the anti-Christian bigotry that is out of control in our government today. Maybe that'll be their new project. But can I come back
it would
to
be if they could raise money to do that.
That's
if
all
they
need,
could make money off of lawful practicing Christians, then they would do that. But that's not where the money is.
There, no.
The money is for people who hate lawful practicing Christians. And that's why they're doing this.
Can I come back to one question? You asked a question of how people got on the list and whatever. There's one thing I want to point out, because I've already said we've been on since the 90s. When you look at the list, they name Aryan this or different groups. There's like one person and in these groups. And sometimes, or a lot of times, law enforcement doesn't even know that these groups exist in their local community. So
because they don't.
Pardon?
Because they don't. They're not a group.
They don't exist or they're not a real group. The purpose of this is to target mainstream Christian conservative groups, patriot groups. That's what they're trying to do.
Yes.
All right, well, it's the bottom of the hour here, about 5:30 or so, Friday the 26th of April. You're with Tom Trento, CJ. We have Ken Klukowski from the Family Research Center and Andrea Lafferty, Traditional Values Coalition, two fabulous activists and researchers and wonderful humans who are in the belly of the beast in D.C. Both of these guys spent a lot of time on the Hill. A couple of minutes left with you guys. We need to, you saw the connection with Corkins through the FBI interrogation. What can people do? Our show here, our radio show, our television show, we're very action-oriented. What can people do to expose the SPLC?
They need to get the media engaged in this. I mean, when the shooting happened at at the Family Research Council building, Fox went to it. Fox News did. If you were watching another network, you wouldn't have known that anything had happened. You wouldn't have known that there was an attempted mass shooting in the nation's capital and that the FBI had shut down an entire block just a few blocks from the White House. And then, of course, well, who was this guy? Then it comes out later, actually, he's a domestic terrorist. And now he's the first convicted ever in U.S. history domestic terrorist under the laws of our nation's capital, under D.C. law. And yet, for all that, you're not hearing about it. This is the kind of stuff that's going out. It's kind of like the old adage, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to hear it, does it make a sound? Right. The media is the one who lets everyone know that trees are falling in the forest. It's a matter of creating the media demand for people to get this information, to get informed. And I think if people have that kind of information, a lot of these things, that's what moves then political pressure to generate the right outcomes to address these things.
I have a couple quick points. Don't buy John Grisham books.
All
Tell
right.
your friends not to buy John Grisham books. Talk about this. Contact your letter to the editor, your local, television. Ask CNN and MSNBC why they're not covering this issue.
All right, we will absolutely do that. Ken and Andrea, we know you guys have to go. We thank you very much
Thank you so much for taking the time.
For taking the time to be with us on our final segment, part 5 of our investigative expose.
We will do the follow-up after the sentencing.
We will. That'll be in June or so. All right, bye guys. See you in DC.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Take care now. It's extremely difficult living and working in Washington, D.C. It's a power-hungry place, and I've spent a lot of time there. And when you have dear, wonderful people like this, and I literally was working with Andrea 25 years ago, fighting some of these battles. And Andrea has been on every one of the news shows, CNBC, MSNBC, Fox, all those things. She's a lobbyist on the Hill, very articulate. Her husband, Jim Lafferty, heads up he's probably listed as an anti-Muslim hater too. He heads up an anti-Sharia organization out of Virginia. that is very involved in fighting against the implementation of Sharia. And Jim is well known in his own right as an activist on these issues. And Ken Klukowski, very accomplished individual dealing with religious liberties at Family Research Council. And, you know, Ken was in the building where Corkins had his gun with 100
Right.
rounds. And then a slip of paper was in Corkins' pocket. When the FBI pulled it out, he saw the two organizations on it, and Andrea's organization, Traditional Values Coalition, was listed.
Right.
That's when she found out she was next.
Right.
And so, you know, that's not to say there still aren't people out there that are individuals that are so preoccupied with their ideology, so frustrated that they're on the wrong side. They want to change culture, and would love to be, you know, immortalized, become a martyr in many senses, that they're not going to go do crazy things. So these people are living dangerous lives, taking a stand for that which makes common sense. That's the world we live in.
The world is definitely upside down.
Well, we're coming to the wrap-up of 5 days, 5-part investigation.
Good job.
Yeah, it was good. What kind of time do we have here? Anybody keeping
12
track?
and a half minutes.
How many?
About 12 and a half.
12 and a half. Okay, good. We can...
I'm sorry, 22 and a half.
Oh, 22 and a half. That's even better. We can show you a few different things here and wrap up. Well, let's open it up. You guys didn't have much opportunity to get involved in this because we had these top-tier guests, and both of us kind of kept quiet a bit, you know, for 5 days, just letting them talk because these guys are there. I think all of them were out.
They're
of
the
DC.
experts.
Yeah, they're the experts. I think all of them were out of D.C. or at least the D.C. area. And for our viewers and listeners, Tom Trento, CJ here. It is about 20 minutes to the top of the hour on Friday, the 26th of April. We hope you all have a safe and wonderful weekend. Don't drink and drive, remember that. But our purpose in doing a 5-part expose, investigative expose, on the Southern Poverty Law Center was to do just what Andrea said at the end, was to raise the awareness. These guys, Morris Dees, the founder, lives in multi-million-dollar mansion.
Which he's entitled to
Yeah,
do.
you know, he's you know, are you entitled to, if a Christian minister lived in a, you know, $10 million home, other than Jeremiah Wright, he lives in a $10 million home.
Mm-hmm.
Does he really?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yes.
He built it in Chicago. Yeah,
Yeah.
people built it for him. If a Christian minister, you know, Billy Graham or Jerry Falwell, one of these guys lived in a $10 million mansion, and were making $400,000, you know, a year, and had all these luxuries and all this stuff, and those guys, Falwell was criticized, and he wasn't making that kind of money, but they would be tarred and feathered. There'd be an offense by the left.
Look, the point is, in this country right now, if you are a Christian and you're breathing, then you
Yes.
are a problem.
Yes.
Period. It doesn't matter how you live your life. If you're Christian and you're breathing, you're a problem.
What about you, Jewish people?
Well, I'm a problem everywhere.
Okay.
They have been problem for a long time.
And I would love to be a problem
You're
for
a
you.
global problem. We're just a national problem here,
Yeah.
Christians. We did this series to raise the awareness level for all of our viewers and listeners out there, so that you can understand this very unique group, Southern Poverty Law Center, that flies really below the radar for common, everyday people.
Right.
That, you know, in one sense, who the heck cares what they do? But in another sense, when they start picking, when they have this, when they've achieved a perception of some sort of gravitas in terms of
That's what the
having a
problem is.
magic meter that can evaluate hate. You know, you wave it over an individual's head. Yesterday's show, Charlotte was telling us that
Yes.
there may be a P.O. box somewhere in the middle of,
Boise or
yeah,
something.
the words that came to me weren't Boise.
Yes,
It was
I know,
bum, you know.
I know. That's why I said
Yeah.
Boise.
Bum something, Idaho,
Yeah.
whatever. You got two guys, you know, they got a P.O. box, and they have, you know, we hate kikes or something, or whatever the thing is.
Right.
And there's some, you know, hate group that the
Right.
SPLC can raise $80 zillion off of.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing about the SPLC is whatever their original mission was, whatever their founding was, you know, 40 odd years ago, whatever it was. That's not what they're about now. They are a fundraising racket, okay, with a $250 million war chest that has legitimacy in the media.
That's the problem.
Legitimacy in the media and in the government at all levels, local, state, and federal, to speak on civil rights and other human rights issues for the United States, and to advise law enforcement and schools at every level on these issues. And that is what the problem is. They do not actually have the legitimacy to do this. They do not practice what they preach. What they preach is anti-American, and they really need to be stopped. They need to be called out on it. And so we need to talk, before we wrap up this 5-part series, about some very concrete steps that people who have been following the series can get engaged in. And so
John Grisham books. Don't buy any John Grisham books.
You know,
that was
if
disappointing.
you want to investigate that, if you're interested at the local level, you need to contact your school board. If your children
Now,
are,
what do you do? I mean,
First find out if this teaching tolerance program is in
That's
your
the
local
name of it,
schools.
teaching tolerance
Program, yeah, run by Bill Ayers.
All right, now,
okay?
hang on, because we're going to walk through this. For you new time activists out there, and you've watched this series, and you're frustrated, you're going, okay, you know, this group can do whatever they want, but once they start targeting good people, calling them hate groups, and then bad people want to kill them, then we've turned a new page in the necessity to take a stand against this and delegitimize this organization and break the ties between them and any influence they have in law enforcement, intelligence, or military.
Right.
Now, starting at a local level, for you newcomers to activism,
Right.
CJ's saying get in touch with your local school board.
Your local schools and
That's
your
going to
local
be
school
like
board.
getting in touch with Dell computers to get repair. You're going to be like speaking overseas to people that speak other languages, and it isn't easy trying to get information
Right.
from your local school board. Don't
Right.
think, hey, do you guys have teaching tolerance? What? What are you talking about? Hey, Joey, what? It's going to be very difficult. You got to bore in. Can I speak to somebody else? We don't know teaching tolerance. Call back tomorrow. We're busy. We're a union. We're not here anymore. You're going to get a runaround. You got to stay in there. Stay in there. Find it out.
Stay in the game.
Go visit the school board when they have meetings. Look at your county area, your local area when there are school board meetings. You can Google that sort of information, whatever your
Right,
school board
right.
is,
Or
and say, I want to know if you're teaching, if you're using the
if
curriculum
you're using
teaching
materials,
tolerance. Okay.
yeah.
All right, now what?
But you can find this out from the principal of the elementary or middle or high school that your child attends also. And
Yeah,
you
if
can
they're not
use that
protesting.
as a starting
If they're
point.
not protesting conservatives who are standing against Obamacare. So, the teachers. All right, what's
Okay,
next?
Okay. Law enforcement, if you have any connections, friends, family who are in local law enforcement. The SPLC has insinuated itself into crimes in local areas and been advising law enforcement on murder cases, murder case in Texas, Boston bomber case in Massachusetts. The SPLC is not an authority on hate groups in the United States and should not be advising law enforcement on who law enforcement should be
Right.
investigating for crimes. So definitely alert local law enforcement who you are friends or family with and let them know what the SPLC is about and that they should not be consulting with the SPLC.
Yeah, I think that one will be a little easier than the school board.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to a local police department, and they're going to be a little skeptical, right? So I would go with a couple of people. I'd go with You know,
Danita.
See the sheriff.
no.
See,
Not Danita.
visit the sheriff's office.
You can go there, but you go with 2 or 3 ladies. You have to look non-threatening.
Bring cookies.
Because the cops are suspicious of it. Yeah, bring cookies. You go with 2 or 3 ladies, and you say, we'd like to know, there are hate groups out there. What is the policies with the procedures of this department? And in particular, there's a group called Southern Poverty Law Center. Do you use any of their materials, or do you know anything about them? And get their names and just get that information. Then talk to us, Tom at TrentoVision.tv. We can help you from there. Okay. What else?
Yeah. Another idea is especially if you're a Southern Baptist or a Pentecostal, contact your
That's
pastors,
crazy,
your
man.
preachers.
That is crazy.
The reverends of your churches, and you need to let them know that the SPLC thinks that you are a hate group.
These guys
by definition, and we need to have the churches challenging this.
I've seen people, and we've all seen stories when somebody wins the lottery. They go from no money to a lot of money, and one of the psychodynamics that occurs when you have a lot of money, you feel immortal. You feel like you could beat anybody at anything, because who's going to hurt you? Oh, the bill collector is going to hurt me. Somebody's going to sue me. Oh, okay, I got $150 million in the bank. You can't hurt me.
Right, can't touch this.
And once and I've had friends that have been in this position, you can see their temperament and their personality and their persona change. Once you get comfortable with nobody can hurt me, then you start thinking,
how can I hurt you?
But I can hurt other people.
Right.
I'm no longer defending myself. I can go on the offense. I can accomplish some nasty stuff. Who do I want to hurt? And if your worldview, if your vision, it's different than TrentoVision, if your vision is that Christians are bad and that pro-family people are bad and that people fighting Islamic jihad are bad.
Right.
And that's the worldview.
But the jihadis
SPLC,
aren't.
But the jihadis aren't. Then you'll start moving in that direction. If you have some successes, as SPLC did, on some of the controversial issues, now you start going after the traditional Christian groups, which really hold the fabric of this country together. Right. This is a serious assault against the glue that's holding Western civilization together by this organization.
And really, what the radical leftist agenda is in this country is literally to rip apart the fabric of this country. Okay? And the SPLC is a part of that.
That's why democracies have sort of a life cycle, because you work real hard to establish it and everybody's sacrificing and unified. Then when you get to a particular point of comfort, and as the amount of recreation increases in your life, the degree of principled positions decreases. Right. As recreation increases, you're less concerned about principles, and you become weak, and sometimes you're defeated from without, but usually from within. Well, the empires have fallen from within. Yeah, that's where we're at, folks.
Yeah.
What else you got?
We also have contact your state and federal representatives.
Okay.
Your state and federal representatives should know who the SPLC is, and there's all kinds of information on the internet that you can find out about their fundraising and all of their programs that you can forward to your state and federal representatives, and you should, because somebody needs to investigate the SPLC as a shakedown organization, which is what it is. Okay, it goes into finds innocent districts around the country where they can go in, show their muscle, and say, we've got a $250 million war chest. You don't want to go up against us. Change your school policy in your district, or we're going to bankrupt you.
Yep, that's exactly what happens.
Okay, so don't let them do it.
What we'll do? I think what we'll do.
Political representatives need to know who these folks are.
Today, Friday, the 26th, April, at just a couple of minutes left in the show, about 10 minutes, I guess, to 6. we did 5 hours. We did a phenomenal 5 hours with a whole bunch of guests on this investigative expose. I think we'll have our guys edit down maybe highlights, maybe a 30-minute highlight tape out of all of this, and that can be a tremendous educational tool, activism tool in the hands of the folks we're talking to right now, the activists on the street.
That's a great idea.
And they could email that to the police chief, they could email it to the school board, they can email it all over the place.
Right.
So we've compiled through a week all of this expertise, all this analysis, all this conclusions.
We'll put together a good media package for you that you can.
Now we need an army of activists out there to
Yeah.
try to keep that glue holding Western civilization
Yeah.
together. I like that idea. You like that idea?
I like that idea too.
Let's give that idea a hand.
It's a real Tea Party community kind of idea.
Okay, you guys go do that, okay?
Yeah.
Mark,
And
where are you when
I
we
think
need you?
I
Mark?
think it's especially ironic that you should mention this on a Friday afternoon because all the guys are thinking to themselves,
Yeah,
oh, great,
right.
we just thought we
Yeah.
were going to bust out of here and you just gave us a
Exactly.
project.
Hey, we're saving the world, gentlemen. We're saving
Yeah.
the world. You know?
Yeah.
All right.
But tell
Keep
us a little
going,
bit-
because I got a couple little things when you're done.
Well, one of the things that Andrea Lafferty brought up is and Ken Klukowski, get the media engaged. The media needs to be educated. I mean, for the most part, the media are on the same side as the SPLC.
Yes.
That
As
goes
we
without
saw-
saying.
Okay,
Yeah,
as we
exactly.
saw with their coverage of the shooting at the Family Research Council, if you're a targeted Christian in this country, you're not a worthy victim, so we don't have to mention
Yeah, the
you.
way they-
We don't even have to cover it.
Yep.
If you're the target of domestic or international terrorists, if you're a Christian, because you're not a worthy victim.
That sounds
And
like
so-
the holder policy for voter intimidation.
Exactly. So, you know what? I say hit the local media for that. Because local media, there's still actually people there who look for stories.
Yeah, you got me
And
thinking. I mean, there's a
so,
lot we can do.
So I
with
think
this.
engage with the local media. And let's get, the media from the bottom up, not
Mm-hmm.
from the top down. So I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, but-
Speaking of the media,
And then also, if you're a public employee, or if you're in any kind of financial services, or you're in human resources or something like this, if you work for Office Depot and you have anything to do with where the pension for Office Depot employees gets invested, you should know a lot about how charity organizations work. What does your corporation or your institution, what organizations
Yeah, because they have a huge hedge fund. Yeah.
do they give money to?
That's interesting.
And see if your organization is on the list of donors to the SPLC, and if they are, then you need to alert.
All right, we've got a couple of
your
minutes left. What else you got?
administrators.
Anything?
I think
You're hitting a lot of stuff, a lot of
yeah.
action stuff.
Yeah, a lot of action
What's
stuff
that?
here.
We got about 5
5
minutes
and a half
left.
minutes.
5.5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. So we can wrap up a few more things about this if you want, but
No, I got-
also
I gotta-
we
I
have
wanna
a
launch
lot
into
of
what we're
things
doing
that
next
we
week.
want to launch into what we're doing next
Yeah.
week exactly, and let's
So
give some.
we'll sum
highlights.
everything up on Southern Poverty Law Center by we will produce a manageable compilation of the 5 shows, and it'll be a powerful educational tool, activism tool that everybody can use to send and keep making noise. That's how you
Yeah.
save a culture, folks. Make a lot
That's
of noise.
right.
All right, next week now. We'll introduce next week. We've been, last week, the 15th, through that whole week, we were all over the Boston bombings. And we kept people updated to some extent, but we had planned this 5-part series. We laid out the scheduling of these very important, very busy guests. So we kept to our investigative program. You like these investigative things? We should really
I
do
do.
more.
I
Would you
do.
like
I
these
like
things?
these
I
investigative
like them, but I
series.
missed the juicy
He
jihad
wants-
week.
Yeah. But
Well,
I mean,
we'll
we
get
could
back
do
to that too.
We can do 5 parts on juicy jihad stuff for sure.
Which we probably will be doing all next week.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Unfortunately.
You don't have to go back to that. Just keep doing your specials.
I think there's going to be a market for increased jihad work for sure.
Yeah.
But next week we will get back to the analysis of the Boston bombing, because the pundits are all over the place. The government agencies are all over the place,
And they're all in the wrong place.
they're all in the wrong place. And we've been bringing you some salient, perceptive, and on-point information. We came out very early on the second day, I think it was Tuesday the 16th, and said that who are we? CJ, Tom, TrentoVision, WNN
fabulous Bunker
1470,
Boys.
5:55 in the afternoon on Friday the 26th. We came out a week and a half ago and said, look, this is Islamic jihad. We looked at a series of metrics, and we said this is a cell. We got some information about the bomb, and we laid out where they got it from. Inspire Magazine 2010. We showed you pictures of it.
Yeah.
So we kind of know what's going on because we have some great contacts all over the place. Update, you may know this, you may not, that when the two boys left, they felt so happy that they had implemented such destruction in Boston. You know, when you kill a little 8-year-old kid, when you kill him, when you rip the legs off of his sister, when you send shrapnel into the mother's head and you ruin her for life with brain damage, and when you get all of this horror, tragedy, and just unspeakable injuries and trauma and devastation, when you get it blasted all over, whether through the mainstream media or through cell phone activity around the world, and you accomplish your jihad for that moment, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. And after Boston, they said, let's go to New York and do the same thing in Times Square. They had 1 or 2 more pressure cooker bombs and about 5 pipe bombs. They were on their way to Times Square. They hijacked a vehicle. They were going to kill the guy. There was no question about that. They said they weren't, but they would have eventually killed him. They ran out of gas. They pulled into a gas station. And it was at the gas station that the Chinese fellow, the owner of the SUV, escaped, contacted the police, and then the takedown occurred. They would have gotten away. If they would have killed that guy, thrown him in the trunk, they would have gotten away. They would have blown up Times Square, killed more people. We know for a fact, folks, that, and now we have their mother saying that she doesn't care that the first son was killed. She doesn't care if they kill the next son. She doesn't care if they kill her. She will go to her death yelling, Allah Akbar! Yeah, Allahu Akbar. And for those of you who don't know, that's in the law enforcement world.
That's a jihad cry. That's a clue,
that's
folks.
A clue.
That's a big clue.
When a jihadi Muslim is saying, I will go out yelling Allah is greatest, that's a clue that we got very serious problems. And next week, we're bringing this show this week to a close. We're going to go into detail, and we're going to give you a series of warnings how you can identify jihadis walking around. There are about 20 different points of information. This is called profiling. We're going to lay out a profile for you so you can watch, and then we're going to tell you what you need to do in these sort of events. And then we're going to tell you where the strikes may be next based upon information that's floating out there. So we will see you next week. It's been a fabulous 5 days. And
very well
thank you
done.
all our guests in Washington,
Thank you for everybody
D.C.
who participated in our series of specials.
And are we down to the bewitching hour here, guys?
You have 10 seconds.
Oh, we have 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Time to
Why don't
say
we
goodbye.
say happy trails.
And have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take it easy. Thanks for watching.